my watch says 10 o'clock, so we start on time here. And welcome to this breakout session, Digitize for Construction 2021. We have 20 minutes for us ahead of us, and you probably know the drill, but if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put it in the Q&A section on the right hand side of the screen, and I'll look it through. And when the 20 minutes has gone, we have 5 minutes for questions. So don't be shy, just type your questions, and I'll make sure that we actually get some interaction in this session. Okay, with me today we have Steve Rudge from Symetri. He's a technical consulting delivery manager, and he will enlighten us a little bit on how to work with digitalization in the construction industry. So by that said, Steve, I hand it over to you, and you have 20 minutes for PowerPoint.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, good morning all. So yeah, I'm Steve Rudge. I've worked for 23 years in the design and built environment. So I've been working as the main contractor on sites, taking designs onto site, building them and handing them over to clients. So I've had my hands dirty for many years. I've worked with the Autodesk partner sector now for around 11 years. So pushing technology and digital workflows and processes into this sector. And I'm, like we were saying, I'm currently the technical and delivery manager for the Symetri UK construction division. And it's interesting because it's a new division we've set up within the UK to focus on construction. And I think it's because we're seeing now that there's a lot of need and requirement to bring construction into that digital era and drive the way that we actually deliver things. And you'll see why we need to start focusing on these. So the agenda for the short session really is why digital construction? What's the problem? And then we'll look at what is digital construction, because it could mean many, many things. Then we'll look at the stages of digital implementation for construction, but also the risks to be aware of as well. And then we'll have a look at a bit more of what's next and beyond the session we're talking about today. So let's get going. So why digital construction? What's so important? Well, actually, the problem's not construction. It's the way the world's evolving. We can see that our population is really increasing from the 1960s and 70s. And actually, our population will increase by nearly 2 billion people over the next sort of 30 years. So that means we've got a lot to consider. We've got to start looking at the way we need to develop our world to cope with that amount of people. We're looking at 120 billion square meters of new floor space is required by 2050. We're looking at 30 million new buildings over the next 30 years. Now that is a considerable amount of work. That's why we need to be smarter at the way we're beginning to look at construction and get these buildings up there to cope with the demand on the population. But it's not just buildings. We're looking at 2050, 75% of the infrastructure that's needed doesn't even exist yet, that we need to build to cope and connect these cities and towns that we'll be building. And we bring it back just to the UK at the moment. The government has stated that we need 300,000 additional new homes to be built per year. And that's a considerable task when you just look just at homes without the industrial side. And homes itself, we're looking, there's around 68 million people in the UK. And if we look and break that down, we've got 3.6 million people living in overcrowded accommodation. We've got a lot on the news at the moment about people living in unsuitable housing, poor housing, damp housing. And that is why the government is saying that we need these around 300,000 new builds to be pushed out. And it's not just that we need to consider, because by 2030, the World Green Building Council are saying that we need all new buildings to operate at net zero carbon. So the sustainability is kicking in now, the renewable energies. But by 2050, we've got to look at 100% of our buildings must operate at net zero carbon, which means that 80% of our existing buildings need to be refurbished by 2050. So you can see we've got the demand on population, but we've also got the demand on the greenhouse effect, the sustainability side of things as well. So we've got lots to consider, but it doesn't stop there. If you look at our population, especially in the dark blue area across the central of the world's continents there, 30% of our people will be aged 60 years and older, which means we're now beginning to have problems in industry. If we look at the construction industry itself, we're investing around 6.8 billion into it to try and cover the shortfall of the skill gap. We're looking at 200,000 new recruits to get into the construction industry to meet this demand. 1 in 10 young people are now considering moving into that construction sector. And, once you're in there, the statistics are showing us that 76% really like working in that sector. But, you look at it now and it's brick building, it's carpentry, it's not really that attractive. And that's another way that digital construction is bringing people in as well. It's beginning to get drones, robots and things like that onto our sites and really looking at a way to do it. So that's why it's so important to look at digitizing construction, meet the population, meet the demand, build things smarter, quicker, and also make it more attractive for people to work in this sector. And, really digitizing is lots of things. We need to get better connected. We need to reuse the data. We need to make our sites safer. Sensors on people and things like that. We need to look at collaborative ways of working. Don't work in silos in different disciplines. Don't work in silos as different subcontractors. Work together on a job. We've got to get working smarter. We've got to get working quicker. But we've also got to consider the life cycle of that building, collate the data, etc., and get better procedures and workflows in place. When we look at all this, that is the forms and the basis of digital construction. So, what is digital construction? Well, I always look at this great image from 5 years ago that Autodesk released, and you start looking at in detail some of the things, people using iPads on site and using sensors and robots digging things, and you sort of looked at it then and you said, nah, it'll take years for this to come on. But actually now you go on sites and there's drones flying, there are people walking around with iPads, so it is actually happening, and that's only in 5 years. So imagine what we can do in the next 5 years, and this is really then when we start to focus, because the drawing offices, the design aspects of it, they went through their digital evolution and came from the drawing boards to CAD. That was easy because that's replacing a Pentel pencil on a board with a mouse, digital lines. We're slightly different in construction. It's not just about replacing paper on sites, drawings on sites that we're building from. It's not just about replacing them check forms that we're doing on paper on clipboards. It's about how we connect the data together. The person on the site needs to be reading the same data and feeding data to people back in the site offices and the head offices. And also the design teams need to be feeding data to the people on the site, live and connected. So it's starting to talk more about connected data. And it's this connected data that we need to start focusing on, because that data is what's going to be used, not for the 2 or 3 years that we build the building, but more the 30, 40, 50 years that the building's going to live for afterwards. That's the importance. And digital construction can work with us to capture that data better, more structured, and in a way that the maintenance teams and our owner operators can actually use in the future going forward. That's the true value. So not only are we going to get quicker, smarter, and better at delivering things and building things, but we're going to have the knock-on effect of really increasing how we hand over the buildings and becoming smarter and more connected for our owner operators. And it doesn't stop there. We can go into how do you traditionally survey? How do you do progress tracking? Do you use drones or something like that now? How do you do your takeoff? Is it still with your marker pen going around and inputting it into a spreadsheet? We can do things digitally now. We can look at short-term planning. We can look at progress on site. We can look at construction sequencing, linking that construction plan. There's lots to consider. It isn't just, like I say, going from a drawing board to CAD to Revit or BIM applied software. We have lots of areas that we need to consider. And really, that's why we need to consider the stages of digital construction and how do we get on to this platform. And what we do here at Symetri, and we work closely with Autodesk on this really, is look at value drivers. As a main contractor, we're all trying to win business, but at the same time as we win the business, we want to reduce our costs, but improve our quality and deliver it at the most minimum time that we can. And also at the same time of this, we also need to consider our health and safety. They are the main 5 value drivers that we need to look at in construction. And what we've done is started to break that down. So as you can see in the green areas, we've got them 5 value drivers. But if we focus, say, on quality, it's about, how to reduce rework during construction. How do we reduce the number of issues that we're making on site as we're building these structures and facilities? How do we reduce the number of defects at handover? How do we capture them during the delivery of the building rather than waiting till the end and looking at delaying things? And how do we improve that handover experience to our clients? How do we collate this data? So we can start focus on each of these streams and coming up with, well, actually, this is the way we do it today. We need to change that into a digital process and a digital workflow. The technology is an afterthought. We need to get the process defined, and then the technology can come in to make that process and workflow work. And basically, that's what we do. Symetri Construction, we work with main contractors, we work with tier 1 supply chain partners and others, house builders, etc. And we pick a value driver like quality. And we ask, what's your problem? What is important to you? And it may be the fact that you're looking to reduce the defects at handover, because that's delaying and, not being able to reduce costs as you're winding down to hand over the building. And that is where we can start then to put a focus on it. We can look at that quality management and say, well, actually, what we've got to do is look at the workflows, look at your quality checking procedures, look at how issues are managed, look at how issues are distributed and closed out, etc. And we can look at the current in, then we can look at what the best technology is to come in and reduce that value driver. We can then look at introducing digital forms, look at digital issues, digital snagging, and digital assigning tasks, and tracking and closing those out. And this is just one area of a value driver. And this is really key to us now, because we can see that we can't get in to a main contractor like we could with architects and just push one bit of software. We can't go in and say, oh, you need Revit. That'll get you modeling. That'll be great. Done. We'll train you up on it. You're up to go. It's not like that in construction. We need to look at all these different areas and consider where you want to get to. And this is where we start looking at your maturity. And we put these into 5 stages. And the 5 stages, really consider, because stage 1 is really just getting you into digital. And we can start working you up till you become an industry leader and leading expert in step 5. And it's really, you might not want to get that far. You're happy with stage 2 or 3. And we can start looking at them in more detail. So look, step 1, that move to digital, initialization. So how are we capturing them quality issues on the job site? How are we getting to that information? How are we capturing it? How are we looking at it? That's the first stage. So yes, we can look at your paper forms and look at moving them into a digital aspect. And then it's more about standardization. How and when are you capturing these quality issues? You don't want to capture them at the end. You want to capture them during the delivery of the whole project. So we can look at standardization, look at repeatability. So you're beginning to get into a new way of working. And then we can look at the minimizing the risk, setting the benchmarking for your subcontractors, looking at how they're performing, looking at capturing the way that they do things, and look at more advanced optimization then, looking at how they, they're looking at the cost impact, the schedule and the safety. This is when then we start to use them analytics that are coming out, the things we're capturing during the earlier stages, to the fact that we can start looking at being an industry leader and looking at future gazing, looking at predictability, things that are going to happen in the future. And this is where augmented reality and machine learning starts coming into some of the platforms, where we can start looking into the future and trying to stop people falling and getting injured. If you've had a near miss on a job site, a few months ago, it'll record it, and you can see that that's going to come when you start erecting another scaffolding tower. So it's all about this integration of information. But as you can see, it's not just one thing. There are many of these areas that we can focus on. And that's why it's not just about buying a piece of technology. We need to look at these sets of things and digitize each one of these, so we can start looking at digitizing construction. It's not as simple as technology. But at the same time, we need to look at your adoption. You can push technology in there, but it's no good if you're only just getting basic adoption of that. If only 10% of that workforce are using it, we need to make sure it's effective. We need to make sure that people are doing it right. And this is the work that we're doing now with many of the main contractors in the UK, is taking them on this journey so we can get impactful adoption, driving efficiency and delivering value, and making sure that the processes are right, the workflows are right, and the underpinning technology is getting us in a place that we can actually deliver. But by doing this also comes risks. Always consider what's in your contract. These days we're getting things, especially in the UK, we get one-line items. This must be a BIM level 2 project. What does that mean? There are huge differences in BIM level 2 and the way we deliver things. Do they want COBie? Yeah. Do they want structured data? Do they want IFC files? Do they want native files? Do they want laser scanning? Is it got to be to a certain level of detail? All this needs to be considered when we take on jobs, because we're now getting involved where people have signed up to contracts and they're getting to handover and we've not got half the stuff collated. How do we do it? Things are covered up now. How do we capture the as-built? We can't. And think about standardization. You can spend huge amounts of money focusing on project by project, standardize across your business, and don't take on too much. Think about a digital strategy. Think about the things you want to do now. Think about what's going to deliver you the best value. Think about implementing mobile devices, bringing BIM into the field. Look at, your quality procedures and etc. Then when you've got established, you can start looking at VR and wearing goggles on site and all these drones and Internet of Things and laser scanning. And then even going further, start looking at 3D printing and bringing robots. Don't try and do everything at once. It's a huge area to focus on. Look at the things that's going to bring you the most benefits to get you on that journey to deliver things bigger, smarter, better. And, what's next? Because we start looking at the way we actually build. We start looking at that modular construction designed for manufacture and assembly. We're beginning to build the buildings different. We're starting to bring things in from the automotive industry. We're starting to look at automating the way we do things on site. We're starting also to look at bringing augmented reality onto sites, so we can actually bring that model into that live environment. So as we're walking around, we can check the model before we're actually fabricating it, before we're building it. So you can do a live walk around the frame before we start doing the M&E fit out. This is huge now in the construction industry, because we can check builders' work holes, we can check those services. And we're starting looking at digital twins as well, collating that data and creating smart cities, bringing all this data together. And I think this is where the industry is going, but we need to get the foundations correct. We can't build and we can't start using robots like this to capture laser scanning of buildings, etc. going forward. It is happening. Robots are coming. Robots are bringing other forms of digital construction. But to be honest, let's start with the basics. Let's get the things we're doing today right on site. Let's get them established in these projects across our businesses. And it's only then can we start looking into the future at all this other technology that's now coming into our world of construction. So hopefully that's enlightened you into construction and digitizing it. And it's a really exciting place to work at the moment. There's lots going on, but do small steps. Consider what's right for you. Consider what's right for your business, for your project, because you can soon very easily come unstuck. Because there's lots you can do, and you'll completely confuse people if you try and implement too much too soon.
So start with small steps.
Start with small steps.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely.
Spot on and right on time as well, Steve. I'll just check if there are any questions. It was a very good and informative presentation, Steve. Very interesting. No question, it seems. And in respect of time, I would say that we will finish this session. Thank you very much, Steve. It was very interesting. Thank
Excellent.
you so much. And see you later.
Yeah, see you later. Take
Bye-bye.
care all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.